Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to answer a question that was asked in class, and a few people wanted to get the answer for it. If you have any other questions, please let me know through email, and please show up at the next class so that I can learn more about the questions you guys want me to make videos about, so that I can help you prepare for the exam. So in this question I'm basically going to help you understand what happens to the prices or to the returns to the factors of production when a country opens to trade in the Heckscher-Ohlin model. So I have done my best to clearly outline all of these steps in the slide. So what we're basically going to do is we're going to go through the slides themselves, and I'm just going to highlight maybe some of the key points here to make sure that you understand what's going on. So first thing first, in the Heckscher-Ohlin model, what does it mean when there's free trade? When there's a country opens to trade, it means that the relative prices change. And basically, for trade to occur in this model, the relative price of the factor that it has in abundance compared to the other country, the relative price of the good that's produced with their abundant factor has to go up. So basically this is with the premise that we start, that these prices are changing in this direction. If you want to learn more about that, you can ask me to make a video about these changes in relative prices. But in this video, we take that as given. So the first thing that we see happening is that because home is abundant in capital and computers is produced intensively through the use of capital, we see that the prices of computers relative to shoes goes up. Okay, so what happens when there's a change in these prices? In order to understand what happens when there's a change in these prices, we have to look at the relative labor to capital and how that changes because of these change in prices. So in this model, we see this through this graph, in which we basically have the relative labor to capital on the x-axis. Okay, so here we have labor to capital, and here we have wage to rental ratio. So in order to understand what happens when there's a change in prices, we have to understand how this economy-wide relative demand for labor is initially set. So how do we get that? We basically get that by starting with the equation where total labor is equal to total capital. Okay, and for this video, I added this over here. So we start total labor for the country over total capital. This total labor is going to be split between the sector for computers and sector for shoes. So we can change the numerator to be LC plus LS. Then we can simply put a plus sign in between them. The denominator is the same, so we can split them up, and then we multiply the denominator and the numerator by K over C in the first term, and by K over S in the second term. And then what we get is we basically get this equation here, which is kind of like the labor to capital ratios as a weighted average of the two sectors. So basically, if we take another look now at this graph, we see that the middle line is basically a weighted average of the labor to capital demand in the shoe sector and the labor to capital demand in the computer sector. So that's exactly what we see. This relative demand is just the average. And the key now is to understand how this average changes when prices change. Okay? And if you understand what happens and how this average changes as prices change, then everything else, the prices or the factor prices or the returns to the factors of production come right out of that. Okay? So basically, this change in prices, a increase in the price of computers relative to shoes, leads to this production shifting away. Production shifts away from shoes and it goes to computers. So what does that mean? That means that this is going to increase and this is going to decrease, because more capital is going to move over from shoes to computers. So what we're going to see is the best to understand how this is going to move through these graphs. Okay, so this increase in relative price of computers shifts these relative demand curves from RD1 to RD2, basically shifts it this way. And why is that? It's because now more of capital is in the computer section compared to before. So going back to these terms, this is what's really important. Because this term went up and this term went down, basically when this middle line is a weighted average of the two lines, now there's more weight on this first line here, more weight on this first line, more weight, less weight on the second line, less weight. So now the middle line is going to shift to the left. And as this middle line shifts to the left, which is the labor demand, the labor supply for the country remains the same, because there is no movement of capital or labor across countries. So as this demand shifts to the left, the new equilibrium is going to go from point A and it's going to go to point B. And this is going to be the new equilibrium. And in this new equilibrium, you're going to get a decrease in the wage to rental ratio. And what we're going to see is labor to capital ratio increase for each of the industries. And this is key. This is key. The reason why they increase is, you see before, this was the point for the computers. And now this is going to be the point because it's a lower wage to rental ratio. This was for the shoes, and this is the new point for the shoes. So at the new point, you see LC over KC is greater than LC over KC1. Okay? And LS over KS2 is greater than LS over KS1. So those being greater is what's the key thing that makes everything change. Because we know that an increase in labor, so as these go up, there's more labor per capital. That means each unit of labor becomes less productive. The marginal productivity of labor goes down. And since nominal wage is MPL times P, you see that here, nominal wage equals P times MPL. Real wage, MPL, is wage over price. So since MPLs go down, the real wages go down, and so openness to trade leads to labor being worse off. On the other hand, the exact same change in ratios means that there's more capital per unit of labor, so marginal product of capital goes up, and using the exact same train of thought that I put here in your slides, we see that the real rental goes up. And in this next slide here, I basically explained and showed all of the key steps. The change in prices lead to these changes in labor to capital ratio, and these changes in capital ratio lead to changes in the marginal productivities of labor, and the marginal productivity of labor is basically the real wage. Marginal productivity of capital is real rental. So that's how we see that there's changes in the returns to the factors of production. And again, I did do my best to bring this right through the slides. So if you pay very close attention to this set of slides here, and you understand basically this equation and how a change in production towards computers from shoes shifts this weighted average, and it shifts this line, and it increases the labor to capital ratio, then you understand exactly what happens to the factor prices. If you need any more videos, please let me know and I can create some more.